Hello and welcome to The Real Conspiracy News, a weekly show where I scour the internet for this week's past week's conspiracy news and bring it to you, the viewer, in digestible bite-sized chunks. Coming up, the Archbishop of Canterbury wants us to forgive Prince Andrew. And the FDA could be about to allow future COVID vaccines to bypass criminal trials. But first up, the infamous Clinton kill list. Does it have a new victim? Or two new victims? Before I go any further though, this conspiracy is currently unproven, all deaths are alleged, and it's not my conspiracy. I am simply a messenger, so, don't kill the messenger please, Mr. and Mrs. Clinton. I don't want to be suicided. But this conspiracy started in the early 1990s, mainly thanks to a documentary called The Clinton Chronicles, where there were many accusations made, some being the Clintons being drug addicts, Bill Clinton having affairs or harassing numerous women, Troopergate, using Arkansas State Police officers to facilitate sexual liaisons and intimidate accusers, misuse of funds with the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, using bank or credit commerce internationals to launder money, profiting from drug smuggling at the Mina airport, murdering witnesses to the Mina drug smuggling operation, covering up the circumstances surrounding the deaths of two boys who were found dead on railroad tracks near the airport. They were Kevin Ives and Don Henry. Protecting a state medical examiner who has repeatedly been accused of misstating the cause of death in several autopsies. The infamous Whitewater controversy, and using contacts at the Rose law firm to shred documentation that would have implicated the Clinton in scandals. And since then, basically, the conspiracy has now took on a life of its own. And I will say, some of these are tenuous at best, but everyone did have a connection with the Clintons. I'm about to discuss some of these deaths. I will name the names, but explain some of them, and the rest I will just leave on screen. You can have a quick read of them. I'll leave them on screen for a few seconds. You can pause and have a read and just have a look at some of the latest names. I don't want to miss any names out, but if I was just explaining who all these people were, this episode would last about 14 days. So, one of their deaths will start from the beginning. James McDougall, Clinton's convicted Whitewater partner, died of an apparent heart attack while in solitary confinement. He was a key witness in the Ken Starrs investigation. Mary Mahoney, a former White House intern who was murdered in July 1997 at a Starbucks coffee shop in Georgetown. The murder happened just after she was about to go public with a story of sexual harassment in the White House. Vince Foster, former White House counsellor and colleagues of Hillary Clinton at Little Rock's Road law firm, died of a gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide. Ron Brown, a Secretary of Commerce and former DNC chairman, reported to have died in a plane crash. A pathologist close to the investigation that reported there was a hole at the top of Brown's skull resembling a gunshot wound. At the time of his death, Brown was being investigated and spoke publicly of his willingness to cut a deal with prosecutors. Ed Willie, Clinton's fundraiser, found dead in November 1993, deep in the woods of a gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide. Ed Willie died on the same day his wife Kathleen Willie claimed Bill Clinton groped her in the Oval Office in the White House. Ed Willie was involved in several Clinton fundraising events. Jerry Parks, head of Clinton's Goober National Security Team in Little Rock, gunned down in his car at a deserted intersection outside Little Rock. Parks' son said his father was building a dossier on Clinton, a dirty dossier. After he died, the files mysteriously vanished from his house. Then James Wilson was found dead in May 1993 for an apparent suicide by hanging. Suzanne Coleman reportedly had an affair with Clinton when he was an Arkansas Attorney General, died of a gunshot wound to the back of the head, ruled a suicide. I don't know many people, or I don't know anybody who's committed suicide, especially from a gunshot, but the back of... Anyway, Danny Costellaro, investigative reporter, while in the middle of his investigation into the Mina Airport drug smuggling issue, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, he slit his wrists. Paul Wiltshire, an attorney investigating the corruption at Mina Airport, was found dead on a toilet on June 22, 1993 in his Washington, D.C. apartment. He delivered a report to Janet Reno 3 weeks before his death. John Parnell Walker, a Whitewater investigation for Resolution Trust Corporation, jumped to his death from his Arlington, Virginia apartment balcony on August 15, 1993. He was investigating the Morgan Guarantee scandal. Barry Seal, a drug-running pilot out of Mina, Arkansas, he was dead too. The next ones are Kevin Ives and Don Henry. known as the Boys on the Track. Reports say the boys may have stumbled upon the Mena, Arkansas airport drug operation. It was a controversial case because the initial report of death said due to falling asleep on the railroad tracks, they were killed by a train. However, later reports claim the two boys had been killed before being placed on the tracks. Many linked to the case died before the testimony could come to the grand jury. Keith Coney died when his motorcycle slammed into the back of a truck in July 1998. Keith Matsaki died stabbed 113 times in 1988. Gregory Collins died from a gunshot wound in January 1989. Jeff Rhodes, he was shot, mutilated and found burned in a trash dump in April 1989. James Milan found decapitated. However, the coroner ruled his death was due to natural causes. How terrifying if natural causes were you'd wake up and someone's head's just fallen off. Jordan Kettleson was found shot to death in the front seat of his pickup truck in 1990. And Richard Winters, a suspect in the Ives Henry deaths, was killed in a set-up robbery in July 1989. And these next ones have got nothing to do with the case, but Victor Thorne, a prominent Clinton critic, found dead of apparent suicide on his birthday. Closa Bewine found dead before testifying against the Clinton Foundation in the Haiti cover-up. John F. Kennedy Jr. planned to run against Hillary Clinton in New York US Senate before obviously he died. Roger Stone claimed this in his book that the Clintons Clintoned Kennedy. Peter W. Smith found dead in his hotel room from allegedly suffocating himself with a plastic bag and helium. His death came 10 days before the publication of a story he'd given to the Wall Street Journal regarding Russian hackers and Hillary Clinton's 33,000 missing emails, which he'd been seeking. Monica Peterson, killed after she discovered that Clinton Foundation was allegedly involved in child sex trafficking ring in Haiti. Allegedly. I don't want to be on this list. Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, everyone knows about Epstein. He was found in his cell supposedly after committing suicide. He'd probably strangled and not hung. His cellmate mysteriously disappeared. The guards both fell asleep. The CCTV had a blip. And it was off during the event. So here you ask, why, Craig, have you gone through this list? We already know all about the Clinton kill list. Well, I've gone through this list because another 2 can be added to the list. Firstly, this month, Mark Middleton, Bill Clinton's special advisor who let Epstein into the White House 7 times, he died. An apparent suicide. Mark Middleton's body was discovered hanging from a tree with electrical cord wrapped around his neck and a close-range shotgun blast through his chest. During his time with Clinton, he reportedly invited Epstein to the White House for at least 7 of Epstein's 17 visits. I don't know who did the other 10, but maybe we need to check that they're okay. Middleton may have also flown on Epstein's plane and connected the 2 powerful men. So if he's not there, that connection could disappear. He was also a managing partner of the mid-corp capital investment firm and worked on multiple non-profit foundations. While assisting President Clinton, Middleton also worked under then Chief of Staff Thomas McCarthy. In February 1995, Middleton left the White House, and the following year, an investigation by the White House found that he had abused his access to impress business clients, and he was barred from the property without senior approval. He would deny these claims, of course. Another one revealed this week that we can add to the list, which I don't know why it only came out this week because the death happened in January. But it's Ashley Haynes, 47, was found drowned in an Arkansas river with an extension cord around her ankle attached to a concrete block. After a massive search, her corpse was discovered 4 days later by a family friend submerged in 10 feet of water. Mrs. Haynes had a bag strapped to her leg with a green extension cord, the state police report states. Inside the bag was a large concrete block that measured 16 by 16 by 4 inch. Again, another source close to Haynes. Again, as I said, whenever anyone says source, it could be a load of old cobblers, but you never know. They too could get Clinton, so might, want to keep the name out of the press, but we'll run with this one as well. Stated that she would never have taken her own life, let alone paddleboarded down the river, lugging a 58-pound concrete block to suicide herself. And the source said it didn't make any sense. She would never kill herself. The Haynes source then said, "When I heard she went missing, I knew instantly it was foul play. I don't believe she killed herself. How could she water paddle down the river with a concrete block?" So there you go. The kill list has extended again. And I would just like to say, I don't own a gun. So if I'm found with a bullet hole, it's not suicide. Up next, the Archbishop of Canterbury asks that we The people forgive Prince Andrew. Now, the Archbishop, Justin Welby, in an interview with ITV News, said, forgiveness really does matter. I think we have become a very, very unforgiving society. There's a difference between consequence and forgiveness. I think for all of us, one of the ways that we celebrate when we come together is in learning to be a more open and forgiving society. Now, with Prince Andrew, I think we all have to take a step back a bit. He's seeking to make amends, and I think that's a very good thing. But you can't tell people how they're going to respond about this, and the issue of the past is, in the area of abuse, are so intensely personal and private for so many people. It's not surprising that there are very deep feelings indeed. No shit, Sherlock. Justin Welby has somewhat of a past himself. But let's go to 2019 when COVID pandemic seems to have been used by the government to bypass parliamentary democracy and line the pockets of colleagues and friends with billions of pounds of public money, masks and all sorts of things. It's an absolute disaster here in the UK. Welby said, isn't this the golden age myth syndrome? Churchill was given huge amounts of money off his mates. He helped people out. They helped him out. It's how politics works. It sounds like Del Boy. Justin went to Eton, the same school as Boris Johnson, so it seems like once eaten, always eaten, and the handshake with spit and muck. In the 2019 election, he also really went for Jeremy Corbyn in the media. So his old pal Boris Johnson seems to have had God's blessing. The church in the UK should be politically neutral. Justin Welby, in another case, in the not too distant past, was approached by worshippers with abuse claims against a priest. But the Archbishop, the then Dean of Liverpool, took Canon John Roberts' side. He even banned the accuser from the city cathedral for being abusive and threatening. Roberts, however, was then later jailed for offences against 3 people, including the accuser. Lawyers say Welby should now face disciplinary action over his role in the scandal, and what makes it even worse is that Welby knew at the time that Roberts had a 1989 conviction for child sex offences. Getting back to the point of what I wanted to talk about, I just wanted you guys to understand a little bit about who Welby was, is why should we be so forgiving of Prince Andrew? Is it because he's part of this establishment that's continually protected by state and church? And what exactly am I forgiving Prince Andrew for? I thought he was innocent. Prince Andrew has just settled with Virginia Giuffre in a civil case brought against, obviously, Prince Andrew, who's agreed to pay 12 million quid and issued a statement right after the deal was signed. Remember that photo that was supposedly photoshopped? Well, Andrew maintains his innocence, but let me ask you, why would anybody pay a £12 million out of court settlement if you're innocent? What is it that Justin Welby is asking people to forgive? Surely an innocent man doesn't need forgiveness. If there's nothing to hide, why not allow a criminal investigation? Judges, lawyers, and let's show that Virginia is a liar. The issue is, should Ghislaine Maxwell want to sing like a canary, which might very well happen, then maybe Prince Andrew has just saved his neck. Just ask Jeffrey Epstein, and then maybe the Clinton kill list has just had a name chalked off the board without the need for a suicide. And finally, coming in at number 3 this week, will the FDA allow Pfizer and Moderna to skip clinical trials for future COVID vaccines? You heard me right. The FDA Advisory Committee will vote on June the 28th on something called the Future Framework, a scheme that would allow Pfizer and Moderna to reformulate COVID-19 mRNA vaccines in perpetuity without conducting clinical trials on the new vaccines. Sounds like a great idea. Pfizer and Moderna have a bit of an issue. The vaccines currently do not stop infection, transmission, hospitalisation or deaths. Even Big Bill admits this.
The economic damage, the deaths, it's been completely horrific. And I would expect that will lead the R&D budgets to be focused on things we didn't have today. We didn't have vaccines that block transmission. We got vaccines that help you with your health, but they only slightly reduce the transmissions. We need a new way of doing the vaccines.
Pfizer and Moderna are making dollar on these vaccines, and they want that to continue. In fact, by June 15th, there will be an available vaccine for under 5s. Let's keep this gravy train going. Maybe the reformulation is to target a new variant. maybe they found some new ingredients that they think will make the formula better. But we simply don't know. But what we do know is that they've currently not worked in the way that they were supposed to. This is a bit of a problem. In fact, it's a major problem, because reformulated vaccines means new clinical trials, surely, test that the vaccine works, new regulatory reviews. But big pharma companies don't want trials. That takes time and that costs money. And unless there's an act of parliament, like the last pandemic, then take to market could be lengthy. And when I say an act of parliament, we're allowed to do trials at the same time as rolling out the vaccine. But pharma wants your money now. No time to waste. We've got no time for trials. We've got no time for any of that nonsense. So Pfizer and Moderna have figured out a way to use regulatory capture to get the reformulated COVID-19 vaccines approved without clinical trials. And that scheme, of course, is the Future Framework. Now, after June 28th, if this is accepted, we need to remember that viruses vary by region. At any given time, an influenza strain circulating here in England is different to that one you might find in South Africa or Asia or Egypt or wherever. One-size-fits-all vaccines do not work. The Future Framework would take the flu strain selection process that fails every single year and apply it to COVID-19 vaccines. The process is the WHO selects the 4 most virulent strains every year and creates a single one-size-fits-all vaccine. Now, in 2021, it was only 8 to 14% effective, between 8 and 14%. In the process, all future COVID-19 vaccines will be deemed automatically safe and effective without further clinical trials because they're considered biologically similar to the existing COVID-19 vaccines. This is highly dangerous, and if the WHO has anything to do with it, we will have to be jabbed, take our government medicine under whatever rules they put in place for the new pandemic, and be happy that our governments are looking after us. And I talked about the WHO in a previous video, which I will link above. But that's everything I've got for this week. Thank you very much for watching The Real Conspiracy News, and I'll be back next week for some more news. Thank you for watching.